Hi. It's been several months since I've done this. I've read many other books, I've done many other things, and I apologize, but I've decided I wanted to come back. Welcome back. This is kind of my own personal project, where I just wanted to read as many public domain works as possible, and I started with Carmila. It is now October, and it is spooky month, and I feel bad that I have not made any progress, but I'm ready to pick it up. If you're new around here, this is just where I upload videos, hopefully, on an irregular schedule in an unfiltered, unpolished product version, where I got a lot of joy out of being read aloud to when I was a kid, and I wish that were done for me a lot more when I was younger. So we're just going to do that here. So we're going to resume Carmila, and we're going to resume where we left off, which I think is chapter 4. But yes, I don't intend to really edit any of this, and I'm hoping I can showcase the books that I have. Going forward, there's going to be a lot more used books, as well as the story and my voice itself. So, Carmila by Joseph Sheridan Lefanu, edited by Carmen Maria Machado. Chapter 4. Her Habits. A Saunter. I told you that I was charmed with her in most particulars. There were some that did not please me so well. I shall begin by describing her. She was above the middle height of women, slender and wonderfully graceful, except that her movements were languid, very languid indeed. There was nothing in her appearance to indicate an invalid. Her complexion was rich and brilliant. Her features were small and beautifully formed. Her eyes large, dark, and lustrous. Her hair was quite wonderful. I never saw hair so magnificently thick and long when it was down about her shoulders. I often placed my hands under it and laughed with wonder at its height, or at its weight. It was exquisitely fine and soft, and in color a rich, very dark brown, with something of a gold sheen. I loved to let it down, tumbling with its own weight as, in her room, she lay back in her chair, talking in her sweet, low voice. I used to fold and braid it, and spread it out and play with it. Heavens, if I had but known all. I said there were particulars which did not please me. I have told you that her confidence won me the first night I saw her, but I found that she exercised with respect to herself, her mother, her history, everything in fact connected with her life, plans and people, an ever-wakeful reserve. I dare say I was unreasonable, and perhaps I was wrong. I dare say I ought to have respected the solemn injunction laid upon my father by the stately lady in black velvet. But curiosity is a restless and unscrupulous passion, and no one girl can endure, with patience, hers being baffled by another. What harm could it do anyone to tell me what I'd so ardently desired to know? Had she no trust in my good sense or honor? Why would she not believe me when I assured her, so solemnly, that I would not divulge one syllable of what she told me to any mortal breathing? There was a coldness, it seemed to me, beyond her years, in her smiling, melancholy, persistent refusal to afford me the least ray of light. I cannot say we quarreled upon this point, for she would not quarrel upon any. It was, of course, very unfair of me to press her, very ill-bred, but I really could not help it. I might just as well have let it alone. What she did tell me amounted, in my unconscionable estimation, to nothing. It was all summed up in 3 very vague disclosures. First, her name was Carmila. Second, her family was very ancient and noble. Third, her home lay in the direction of the west. She would not tell me the name of her family, nor their armorial bearings, nor the name of their estate, not even the country they lived in. Do not suppose that I worried her incessantly on these subjects. I watched for opportunity and insinuated rather than urged my inquiries. Once or twice I did attack her more directly, but no matter what my tactics, the result was, invariably, utter failure. Reproaches and caresses were all lost upon her, but I must add this. Her evasion was conducted with so pretty a melancholy and deprecation, with so many passionate declarations of her liking for me and trust in my honor, and with so many promises that I would, one day, know all, I could not find it in my heart long to be angry with her. She placed her pretty arms about my neck, drew me to her, and lay her cheek to mine, murmuring with her lips near my ear, "Dearest, your little heart is wounded. Do not think me cruel because I obey the irresistible law of my strength and weakness. If your dear heart is wounded, my wild heart bleeds with yours. In the rapture of my enormous humiliation, I live in the rapture of my enormous humiliation, I live in your warm life, and you shall die, sweetly die, into mine. I cannot help it. As I draw near to you, in your turn, will draw near to others. As I draw near to you, you, in your turn, will draw near to others, and learn the rapture of that cruelty, which yet is love. So, for a while, seek to know no more of me and mine, but trust me with all your loving spirit." And when she had spoken such a rhapsody, she would press me more closely in her trembling embrace and lay soft kisses upon my cheek. Her agitations and her language were unintelligible to me. From these foolish embraces, which were not of very frequent occurrence, I used to wish to extricate myself, but my energies seemed to fail me. Her murmured words sounded like a lullaby in my ear, and soothed my resistance into a trance, from which I only seemed to recover myself when she withdrew her arms. It's a really pretty picture. I wonder who illustrated it. Sorry, you might hear my cats in the background. In these mysterious moods, I did not like her. I experienced a strange, tumultuous excitement that was pleasurable, ever and anon, mingled with a vague sense of fear and disgust. I had no distinct thoughts about her while such scenes lasted, but I was conscious of a love growing into adoration, and also of abhorrence. This, I know, is a paradox, but I can make no other attempt to explain the feeling. Is this Carmila, or is this? See, because she looks more vampiric, but she embodies the mood of the text more, which is very interesting to me. I now write, after an interval of more than 10 years, with a trembling hand, and with a confused and horrible recollection of certain occurrences and situations in the ordeal through which I was unconsciously passing, though with a vivid and very sharp remembrance of the main current of my story. But, I suspect, in all lives there are certain emotional scenes, those in which our passions have been most wildly and terribly roused, that are above all others the most vaguely and dimly remembered. Sometimes after an hour of apathy, my strange and beautiful companion would take my hand and hold it with a fond pressure, renewed again and again, blushing softly, gazing in my face with languid and burning eyes, and breathing so fast that her dress rose and fell with a tumultuous respiration. It was like the ardor of a lover. It embarrassed me. It was hateful and yet overpowering, and with gloating eyes she drew me to her. Her hot lips traveled along my cheek in kisses, and she would whisper, almost in sobs, "You are mine. You shall be mine. You and I are one forever." Then she would throw herself back in her chair with her small hands over her eyes, leaving me trembling. "Are we related?" I used to ask. "What can you mean by all this? I remind you perhaps of someone whom you love, but you must not. I hate it. I don't know you. I don't know myself when you look so and talk so." She sighed at my vehemence, then turned away and dropped my hand. Respecting these very extraordinary manifestations, I strove in vain to form any satisfactory theory. It was unmistakably a momentary breaking out of suppressed instinct and emotion. Was she, notwithstanding her mother's volunteer denial, subject to brief visitations of insanity, or was there here a disguise and a romance? I had read in only storybooks of such things. What if a boyish lover had found his way into this house and sought to pursue his paramour and masquerade with the assistance of a clever old adventuress? But there were many things against this hypothesis, highly interesting as it was to my vanity. I could boast of no masculine attentions. Between these passionate moments there were long intervals of gaiety and brooding melancholy, during which, except that I detected her eyes so full of fire and following me, I might have been as nothing to her. In these brief periods of mysterious excitement, her ways were girlish, and there was always a languor about her. Languor? And there was always a languor about her, quite incompatible with a masculine system in a state of health. In some respects, her habits were odd, perhaps not so singular in the opinion of a town lady like you, but as they appeared to us rustic people. She used to come down very late, generally not till 1 o'clock. She would then take a cup of chocolate, but eat nothing. We then went out for a walk, which was a mere saunter. She seemed, almost immediately, exhausted, and either returned to the manor house or sat on one of the benches that were placed, here and there, among the trees. This was a bodily languor with which her mind did not sympathize. She was always an animated talker, and very intelligent. She sometimes alluded for a moment to her own home, or mentioned an adventure or situation, or an early recollection, which indicated a people of strange manners, and described customs of which I knew nothing. I gathered from these chance hints that her native country was much more remote than I had at first fancied. As we sat one afternoon under the trees, a funeral passed us by. It was that of a pretty young girl whom I had often seen, the daughter of one of the rangers of the forest. The poor man was walking behind the coffin of his darling. She was his only child, and he looked quite heartbroken. Peasants walking 2 by 2 came behind, singing a funeral hymn. I rose to mark my respect as they passed and joined in the hymn they were very sweetly singing. My companion shook me a little roughly, and I turned, surprised. "Don't you perceive how discordant that is?" she said brusquely. "On the contrary, I think it very sweet," I answered, vexed at the interruption and very uncomfortable, lest the people who composed the little procession should observe and resent what she was saying. I do wish there were a little bit of space in between so that I could more properly see the full image, but this is really pretty. I resumed, therefore, instantly, and was again interrupted. "You pierce my ears," said Carmila, almost angrily, stopping them with her tiny fingers. "Besides, how can you tell that your religion and mine are the same? Your forms wound me, and I hate funerals. What a fuss! Why, you must die, everyone must die, and all are happier when they do. Come home. My father has gone on with the clergyman to the churchyard. I thought you knew she was to be buried today." "She? I don't trouble my head about peasants. I don't know who she is," answered Carmila, with a flash from her fine eyes. "She is the poor girl who fancied she saw a ghost a fortnight ago, and has been dying ever since, until yesterday, when she expired. Tell me nothing about ghosts. I shan't sleep tonight if you do. I hope there is no plague or fever coming. All this looks very like it, I continued. The swineherd's young wife died only a week ago, and she thought something had seized her by the throat as she lay in her bed and nearly strangled her. Papa says such horrible fancies do accompany some forms of fever. She had been quite well the day before. She declined afterwards and died within a week. Quick footnote before we finish the next sentence. Footnote 9. An early example of the vampire loathing religious imagery and ceremony. Well, her funeral is over, I hope, and her hymn sung, and our ears shan't be tortured with that discord and jargon. It makes me nervous. Sit down here, beside me. Sit close, hold my hand, press it hard. Hard. Harder. We had moved a little back and come to another bench. She sat down. Her face underwent a change that alarmed and even terrified me for a moment. It darkened and became horribly livid. Her teeth and hands were clenched, and she frowned and compressed her lips while she stared down upon the ground at her feet. She trembled all over with a continuous shudder as irrepressible as Og. All her energies seemed strained to suppress a fit, and at length a low convulsive cry of suffering broke from her, and gradually the hysteria subsided. "There! That comes of strangling people with hymns," she said at last. Hold me still. It is passing away." And so gradually it did. And, perhaps to dissipate the somber impression which the spectacle had left upon me, she became unusually animated and chatty, and so we went home. This was the first time I had seen her exhibit any definable symptoms of that delicacy of health which her mother had spoken of. It was the first time also that I had seen her exhibit anything like temper. Both passed away like a summer cloud, and never but once afterwards did I witness on her part a momentary sign of anger. I will tell you how it happened. She and I were looking out one of the long drawing-room windows when the figure of a wanderer whom I knew very well entered the courtyard. He used to visit the manor house generally twice a year. He was a hunchback with sharp, lean features. He had a pointed black beard and was smiling from ear to ear, showing his white teeth. He was dressed in fawn, black and scarlet, and crossed with more straps and belts than I could count, from which hung all manner of things. Behind, he carried a magic lantern and 2 boxes, in one of which, I knew, was a salamander, and in the other a mandrake. These monsters used to make my father laugh. They were compounded of parts of monkeys, parrots, squirrels, fish, and hedgehogs, dried and stitched together with great neatness and startling effect. He had a fiddle, a box of conjuring apparatus, a pair of foils and masks attached to his belt, several other mysterious cases dangling about him, and a black staff with copper ferrules in his hand. His companion was a rough, spare dog that followed at his heels. The creature stopped short at the drawbridge, and after a little while began to howl dismally. In the meantime, the mountebank, standing in the midst of the courtyard, raised his grotesque hat and made us a very ceremonious bow, paying his compliments verbosely and in execrable French or German not much better. Then, disengaging his fiddle, he began to scrape a lively air, to which he sang with a merry discord, dancing ludicrously. It made me laugh, in spite of the dog's howling. This is my cat Lo-Fi, you may have heard her. She has come to join the read-along. There is a footnote here, right next to here. When he was a young man, the mountebank had a dream that one day he would encounter a vampire. He set about acquiring as much knowledge as possible about these beings, including charms, trinkets, and spells that would keep them at bay. He did, earnestly, believe them to work, but only because of a coincidence. He stayed safe because of a crucifix stitched into his tunic by a seamstress who had taken a liking to him and was concerned for his safety. The fact that he did not recognize the vampire when he saw her would be an acute embarrassment that would haunt him for the rest of his days. He later married the seamstress and apologized to his dog. That was an extension of the footnote. Then he advanced to the window with many smiles and salutations, hat in his left hand and fiddle under his arm, and with breathless fluency he grabbed a long advertisement of all his accomplishments, the resources of the various arts which he placed at our service, and the curiosities and entertainments which it was in his power, at our bidding, to display. Will you ladyships be pleased to buy an amulet against the Opire, footnote 11, a Polish vampire, which I hear is hunting like a wolf through these woods, he said, dropping his hat on the pavement. He is killing right and left, and here is a charm that never fails. Pin it to your pillow, and you may laugh in his face. These charms consisted of oblong slips of vellum with cabalistic ciphers and diagrams upon them. Carmila instantly purchased one, and so did I. We smiled down upon him, amused. At least, I was. As he looked up in our faces, he seemed to detect something that fixed, for a moment, his curiosity. In an instant he unrolled a leather case, full of all manner of odd little steel instruments. See here, my lady, he said, displaying it, and addressing me. I profess, among other things less useful, the art of dentistry. Plague take the dog, he interpolated. Silence, beast! He howls so that your ladyships can scarcely hear a word. Your noble friend, the young lady at your right, has the sharpest tooth, long, thin, pointed, like an awl, like a needle. Ha ha! With my sharp and long sight as I look up, I have seen it distinctly. Now if it happens to hurt the young lady, and I think it must, here am I. Here are my file, my punch, my nippers. I will make it round and blunt, if her ladyship pleases, no longer the tooth of a fish, but of a beautiful young lady such as she is. Hey? Is the young lady displeased? Have I been too bold? Have I offended her? The young lady, indeed, looked very angry as she drew back from the window. How dares the mountebank insult us so? She said. Where is your father? I shall demand redress from him. My father would have had the wretch tied up to the pump, flogged with a cart whip, and burnt to the bones with the cattle brand. She retired from the window a step or two and sat down, and had hardly lost sight of the offender when her wrath subsided as suddenly as it had risen. After that, she gradually recovered her usual tone and seemed to forget the little hunchback and his follies. My father was out of sorts that evening. He told us that there had been another case very similar to the two fatal ones that had recently occurred. The sister of a young peasant on his estate, only a mile away, was very ill. She had been, as she described it, attacked very nearly in the same way as the others, and was now slowly but steadily declining. All this, said my father, is strictly referable to natural causes. These poor people infect one another with their superstitions, and so repeat in imagination the images of terror that have infested their neighbors. But that very circumstance frightens one horribly, said Carmila. How so? Inquired my father. I am so afraid of fancying I see such things. I think it would be as bad as reality. We are in God's hands, said my gentle father. Nothing can happen without his permission, and all will end well for those who love him. He is our faithful Creator. He has made us all and will take care of us. Creator? Nature, said the young lady. And this disease that invades the country is natural. Nature. All things proceed from nature, don't they? All things in the heaven, in the earth, and under the earth act and live as nature ordains? I think so. The doctor said he would come here today, said my father, after a silence. I want to know what he thinks about it, and what he thinks we had better do. Doctors never did me any good, said Carmila. Then you have been ill? I asked. More ill than ever you were, she answered. Long ago? Yes, a long time. I suffered from this very illness, but I forget all except my pain and weakness, and these were not so bad as are suffered in other diseases. You were very young then. I dare say. Let us talk no more of it. You would not wound a friend. She looked languidly in my eyes, passed her arm round my waist lovingly, and led me out of the room. My father busied himself over some papers near the window. Why does your papa like to frighten us? Said the pretty girl with a sigh and a little shudder. He doesn't, dear Carmila. It is the very furthest thing from his mind. Are you afraid, dearest? I should be very much if I fancied there was any real danger of my being attacked as those poor people were. You are afraid to die? Yes, everyone is. But to die as lovers may, to die together so that they may live together. Girls are caterpillars while they live in the world, to be finally butterflies when the summer comes. But in the meantime, there are grubs and larvae, don't you see? Each with their peculiar propensities, necessities, and structure. So says Monsieur? So says Monsieur Buffon in his big book in the next room. Later in the day, the doctor came and was closeted with Papa for some time. He was a skillful man of 60 and upwards. He wore powder and shaved his pale face as smooth as a pumpkin. He and Papa emerged from the room together, and I heard Papa laugh and say as they came out, Well, I do wonder at a wise man like you. What do you say to hippogriffs and dragons? The doctor was smiling and shaking his head. Nevertheless, life and death are mysterious states, and we know little of the resources of either. And so they walked on, and I heard no more. I did not then know what the doctor had been broaching, but I think I guess it now. Well, that was fun. I'm going to go back and bookmark some words that I did not know how to, or I don't know their meaning, I don't know how to pronounce them, and I'll put them in my Excel spreadsheet. Thanks for tuning in. I will come back for the next chapter. Bye!